Welcome to the Good Rookie Show. My name is Faheem.
And my name is Nelly J, y'all, and we are good
That's
bookies.
right.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Good Tuesday. And guess what? It's the Good Rookie Show.
Yep.
So, y'all, I'm so excited. We have an amazing guest. We come through from Toronto talking
Mm-hmm.
all the top sports and culture. And our
Mm-hmm.
guest, y'all, get a pen, get a notepad, take some notes. Fahim, please introduce who we got.
All right. So definitely for the culture, we'll be able to really get into what she brings to the table. Really excited to have her on today. Much of an influencer, especially you're on Twitter. So if you're not on Twitter, maybe a reason to hop on Twitter and take her in. Let's welcome Imman Adan to the podcast today.
Iman, Iman,
Hi, you guys are
Iman,
too kind.
Iman,
Thank you.
Iman. Iman, how are you today, my dear?
I'm good. I'm good. Coming off of a Raptors win. It's better than coming off of a Raptors loss, guys, right?
Exactly, exactly. So, Iman, I like to ask a quick question before we jump into the main topics. I think the NBA this year, every year there's always a few teams that overperform or do more than we thought they would do, right? And I think before the season started, we all saw Victor come overseas, do his thing, and we all assumed teams will be tanking, right? People said the Jazz, the Spurs, Portland. I mean, we heard it all. But those teams are whooping and taking names, not from just any team, but from playoff teams. Please, let's talk about this, Iman. Are you shocked at Portland, the Jazz, and the Spurs, like giving people the business thus far?
I'm definitely impressed by all of them. I think what's like always important to remember though is players don't tank, right? Like front offices tank. Players, they don't benefit from their team losing games and Wembanyama coming in. Coaches also, they don't tank. They don't benefit from having losses on their record. So I wouldn't be surprised if, by January, some of these players start getting injuries. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't be surprised if teams are holding them back because maybe there's some surgery that might have happened in the off season that they're going to do in January, or something like that. Because for players, it's like, why am I going to lose so that you can draft my replacement, and then I lose out on money and I lose out on minutes. So they don't benefit from that. They benefit from going out and trying to win every game. And I think that maybe some of these other teams that we expected to be good are kind of overlooking the Jazz, and they're overlooking, the Thunder and all of these other teams. And so they get put on their butts pretty quick because they think it's going to be an easy win, and it's not.
Yep. I think you're right. And also, I think so. That's my thing, right? I feel like they underestimate the Jazz. The Jazz had a lot of length. They got a lot of big dudes. You know what I'm saying? Even the Spurs, like Vassell is doing he is playing like a star, averaging 20 points right now. So I just think that to your point, our teams approaching these teams like, yo, we ain't gotta worry about it. Let's just go and win, right? Because they assume because there's no star-studded name, the teams aren't good. But again, this is the NBA. All these guys are playing in the highest level of basketball in the world. So the fact that you think teams are going to tank because you think they're not good enough, I agree. And I think some of these teams taking these losses it's gonna bite them in the bum when they're trying to fight for that play-in spot, right? Last year, there was a lot of one games between from the 8th to the 10th. It was like one game differences. So Fahim, what's your thoughts on these teams? Jazz, the Spurs, even Orlando's looking pretty good. Like they're not no easy win either. Detroit is playing well. Pacers have had some big wins. What's your thoughts on these low tier teams actually stepping up right now?
Yeah, it's early in the season, obviously. Uh, I don't know how sustainable it is for some of these teams, uh, especially like San Antonio. I really don't see much like past the All Star break. I think remember last year with the Washington Wizards, for instance, they came
They're also
no,
doing well too.
they were really making noise, and people were thinking with the new trade, okay, this could be their year, and then reality kind of hit. I feel this is going to happen with a lot of these teams. In regards to what you guys were saying with the tanking, I get it. With Victor looking so impressive, but heard about Adam Silver just mentioned, well, hinted toward possibly a regulation if teams do tank going down. With something like that, that can really, actually, that might be a topic for another time, just because of the fact that there's so much layers to what can happen. Do I think Victor is the kind of guy you're going to tank for and possibly run the risk of doing something for your franchise? I mean, he's a talent that you would think comes around once in a while, but I don't like Imman was saying. I don't think like players don't tank. If anything, it's going to be pressure from front office, which will trickle down to the coaches, which will trickle down to the players. And this is not the movies. I don't really think that it's really like a GM or a front office person is going to say to a coach, you know what, maybe you shouldn't play this guy. And if it does happen, I'd be shocked. How about you guys, real quick, before we transition? Do you think the reality that a front office person is going to say to a coach, for instance, we're going to tank, maybe sit a player? Do you think that's is that a realistic situation, Imman?
I think it depends on who the coach is. I think, if you're someone like Greg Popovich and you have your job in lock, then sure. But we can look at the Sixers, for example, when they were tanking, Brett Brown had a really short leash. And part of that is his record. And you look at it now and it's like, we're talking about his record as a coach. And it's unfair when you think about the players that he had to play for so long. So I think in terms of tanking, that always gives job security to executives because they're like, well, we got all these picks, we're going to do something. It kind of gives them a long leash, but it doesn't give coaches a long leash, and we saw that. So I think, yeah, there's probably going to be pressure. I wouldn't, we've seen it with the Thunder. How many times does Shai Gilgeous-Alexander get shut down at the end of the season? So GMs are the ones who are tanking, and they're going to put the pressure on coaches, and coaches have to listen to their bosses, but it does depend on the job security that's there. Someone like Popovich can afford to do it. Someone on a tighter leash, they really can't, but they have to listen to their boss. So what's going to happen? I don't know.
No, I agree. Everything you stand to add on top of that. I do think we saw in the NFL for those, with the Miami Dolphins or what team was it? I think it was Jacksonville or Miami where there was drama because a GM told a coach to tank. And then we saw that black coach doing a lawsuit against the NFL and certain teams. That's because he felt pressure to tank. He was told, do not win anymore because, in the NFL, it's like the bottom team is the first draft, right? So there's incentive to tank. I think in the NBA, tanking doesn't guarantee number one spot. I think it's like a risk you take. So I tank to be maybe top 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. You never know, right? So to me, tanking is not always the best. Plus, the more you win, the more revenue you make for your franchise, right? If you're winning games, I want to pay more money to watch your games. If we're losing games, ticket prices go down. The Raptors, y'all, our prices back in the day, no offense, but really low. Okay, we won 1 championship. All of a sudden, people are like, "Oh my God, I can't afford to go to these games." So, at the end of the day, I think it's a business, and I think you want to win, but you don't want to win too much. It's a happy medium. So I wonder when these teams all reach 30 wins, what happens then, right? To Imman's point, are we going to now sit Shai because we're at 30 wins now? Whoa. We don't want to be top 10 now. I just wonder what's going to happen at that point. But, I think players want to win, right? They're competitors. We all play sports. Who wants to go on a team and say, all right, God, let's try to lose our best today? No one will do that crap. So yeah, it's tough, man. Honestly, and that's why with the whole Shai situation, Masai is looking into that closely. We're all told that. Before we pass out, do we want Shai? Do we want to get him guys on the Raptors? Imman, are you all for trading for Shai for SGA, or do you think he should just go somewhere else in terms of his talent?
I love Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm such a big fan of his. If you can get a talent like that, certainly go for it. I just think he's such a young, special talent, and I would love to see him on a winning team and in a winning organization. He has great length. He's a great scorer, which is something that we know the Raptors need. And just, dynamic guard play. I'm a huge Shai Gilgeous fan.
All right. So Imman says, yes, let's get him. Faheem, your thoughts? Should we get Shai or what?
I echo everything she said. Only one question is not even in doubt, but I just want to ask real quick, maybe both of you. Do you think he's the number one option? Do you think he is a cornerstone for a franchise?
Ooh, that's a good question. Go ahead, Imman.
He is that talent, everything you said, everything, but is he
for me, the 1B for me. He's a 1B. If we can get Yeah,
You,
I think he's a 1B.
you
He
think? Okay.
can be. That's a good point. I just think his injuries is my concern. He hasn't really been healthy the last 2 years, but I don't know if it's because they don't want him. Like, I'm not sure what that is about, but he hasn't really played a full, like, over 70 plus games. Has he? I don't think he has.
They shut him down quite often in March, and I think he has dealt with some injuries. Certainly, he's dealing with injuries.
Right
Even
now.
at the
He's in my
start of the
fantasy team,
season.
so I know. I'm always like,
Yeah.
ah, damn.
So he certainly has a lot of injuries, but they do shut him down in March. That is most certainly something that they do. So when we're looking at the games played, it comes down to them wanting a Chet Holmgren or them wanting, whoever else they've drafted over the years. In terms of him being a number one, and that's kind of what my piece is about, is like, how do the Raptors really get that? I think, like, if we have a team with Shea and Scotty in the future, like, I'm like, yeah, let's
That would be really good.
That is an elite team.
Right.
So like, what he can become, I'm kind of keeping that. I think the sky's the limit for the kid. Superstar right now, no, but I watch him. I watch like the trajectory of like a John Morant and watch his growth, and it's just like, that is an exciting player. What he is today, isn't even what he was last year when he was MIP, and like, he's just been phenomenal to start the year. And then last year wasn't what he was the year before that, despite sort of being a star in this league. So was Shea. He's a little bit older, like 25, I think, which is like not a baby in the league, but also incredibly young, and has been on a bad team. So I'm willing to give him some more leeway so we can see him become the star that I know he is.
Yeah. For me, I think Shea, like, he can be an all-star for sure, but we know all-stars are only decided by winning teams, right? You're not like an all-star on a terrible team make it to the all-star game. So to your point, I think being in OKC and not winning is kind of detrimental to his trajectory. But that's why I really hope they do trade him or he leaves, because I think they have a hidden diamond in the rough, and I don't think he gets the recognition because of his situation.
And I also think he'll be doing a lot better if he's playing around better talent. More things to work with, which would obviously help him in his rise also. So most definitely.
Come home, Shea, come home. Sorry.
Come home. So Bleacher Report, they came out with their top 100 players, and it's a good list. They do it on the off season. They're not the only one. Other publications do also. But theirs was very interesting, just to the fact that they happened to highlight there's 5 Raptor players that made the list of the top 100. I think it'd be kind of cool if we just went through our thoughts on where they landed. I'm just going to list out the 5 players, where they land, and anything you guys want to punch in. The floor is yours. So we'll go Pascal Siakam. He was the highest Raptor at 28. We had Scotty Barnes and Fred VanVleet both tied for 41. We had OG Anunoby. He was 61. And then Gary Trent Jr. at 86. Having 4 players, pretty much our starting lineup.
5.
Sorry, my bad. 5 players.
All the starters, yeah.
all the starters in the starting lineup. Thoughts? Start with you, Imman. I'd be interested.
I'm always really down on these lists. I hate them generally, and I don't like this one. Yeah, I don't really like these lists. I don't know what they also rank. It's always like, are you projecting what they'll be this season? Are you saying what they're at currently? Either way, like, looking at Scotty and Fred VanVleet, as much as I love Scotty Barnes, as of right now, Fred VanVleet is still a better player.
Hello, he's an all-star. Like, what are we talking about?
An all-star just a season ago. So just like,
something
as basic as that without looking at the entirety of this list. But they'll have, a player like Drew Holiday that we're seeing completely on the decline. And so are you projecting? Because I would imagine Scotty is tied with Fred because they're projecting into the future, but you have someone like Drew Holiday who's listed ahead of both of them. And it's like, he's clearly regressed into, yes, he's an elite defender, but what we're watching on the offensive end is a Drew Holiday that is regressing at not a slow rate either, quite frankly, where he's just not able to do it night in and night out. He's never been the shooter that Fred VanVleet is, but also just like not being the scorer that he once was as well. So it's just like, I don't quite know what the point is in doing these things. I never really understand them. I think Pascal Siakam is way too low at 28 or is too high, whatever it is, that's bad. I think he should be higher. I think he is a better player. First of all, Zach LaVine is right in front of him. Anthony Edwards is incredibly young. I think they're projecting Bradley Beal. What has he done in the last few years to even, like on the offensive end, sure, he can get you 30 points, but he can do that on a losing team and doesn't play a lick of defense. Why is he so high there? Brandon Ingram can give you a lot of what Pascal gives you on the offensive end, but with none of the defense. Just like looking at this list, I'm like, I don't quite get it. And I never get it when they make these lists. They never really make sense to me because it's hard to rank 100 players. Not every single person that they ask is basing things on the same rubric, right? Like they're not weighing defense and offense highly, shot creation versus playmaking. They're not weighing them the same way. So you're not going to get a set rubric for every single person across the board. So someone, because generally how these publications do it is they have maybe a panel of people and they get each person to rank and then they come up with a collective number and that's how it's decided. And if every single person is not basing it off of the same rubric, you get numbers that are all over the place. And so I just it says Zion Williamson, his highest rank was 11 and his lowest rank was 53. Does that mean one person ranked him 53rd best player in the league and another person ranked him the 11th best player in the league? That sounds like a wild discrepancy. So I don't know. I hate these lists. I'm never quite a fan of them. And I always think they put the Raptors a little bit too low.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know what, guys, everything Imman said, stamped, right? Cosign Nelly J. Also, this tells me that all the experts they spoke to only watch Raptors once a year. Let's talk about it, guys. Honestly, there's no way you've watched more than 2 Raptor games this year and you think Siakam is 28th. Siakam was destroying Philadelphia, like just embarrassing Matisse and all those guys last year. This man owns LA. He has not lost in the city of LA in his career. What are we talking about here? Like, how is he 28th? I just think that they don't watch the Raptors, so definitely ignorance is bliss, right? They'll go, oh, Raptors, they made it to the playoffs. Oh, they were this. Okay, this year, Kevin Durant is back. Ben Simmons, definitely, they're going to be below those. Like, people just make assumptions based on the past, right? Like what Imman was saying, people's talent have regressed. We're seeing guys that we thought could will teams to win struggle, are struggling to even score right now. So I just think that, it's like these lists are not meant for Canadian. I think people there are mostly American folks who are obviously ranking. I doubt Bleacher Report maybe has 1 or 2 Canadians on here, probably 1 or 2 that they ask their expertise. Because if you watch the Raptors, you would not put Scotty with the same as Freddie. Like, that's the most asinine. I was like, okay, so they just saw Scotty Barnes win Rookie of the Year and go, okay, now he'll be the second option. If you think Scotty Barnes is the second option for a team offensively, what are we talking about here, right? So it just shows me again, the Bleacher Report don't know sports, right? They're really good at creating agendas. They're really good at agendas and creating narratives and sharing information. When it comes to actually analysis, they're trash. That's it.
Okay, well, it all comes down to content. And when they make a list like that, it obviously gets people talking and creates conversation. So I understand.
Yep, but I understand. Guess right. Don't defend Bleacher Report for him. Okay, let's be real here. They put Scotty Barnes in the same ranking as an all-star Fred VanVleet. You know what I'm saying? So clearly you did not watch Raptors last year. You didn't watch us. And even if we're predicting for this season, look at our starting 5. Why would you think Scotty Barnes is the second option? Come on, man. Come on.
That's fair. So let me throw this then. So we had Pascal 28. We spent quite a bit of time on Pascal. I'm just going to throw out some real quick and throw out some players, and you just let me know who you'd replace, like because these players are ranked lower than Pascal. I'll name them out and just say you'd replace, just let me know. Okay, so we got Pascal 28, Zach LaVine, Anthony Davis. These are all, mind you, lower than Pascal. Bradley Beal, Brandon Ingram.
All 3. Everyone
so lower means like they're
ranked higher than better.
They're ranked higher than him. Yeah, you're saying lower.
Every single person you just named right now.
Everybody. Okay, so once again, Zach LaVine, Anthony Edwards, and Bradley Beal so far. So those 3 all Pascal.
Oh yeah, they're all below him. Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Brandon Ingram.
So Brandon Ingram, I think, has really good talent, but he hasn't proven to me that he can perform in the playoffs like that. I'm sorry. Pascal has done it with Kawhi. Brandon had Zion. He has CJ McCollum. You know what I'm saying? He has more talent around him. I'm just saying, Faheem. I'm sorry. Last year he was young.
So you would go with Pascal over Brandon Ingram?
No, I'm saying talent-wise, Brandon Ingram is more talented than Pascal, but in terms of like he hasn't won enough for me.
I understand.
Also, has
To me,
Brandon
it's
even been
about
on
defense.
and also has Brandon even been on an all NBA team before?
No.
Like forget that for him. Has he been on an all-star team? Has he won any awards? Has he been on an all NBA team? Defense or
hold on, you're dumping on Ingram. Hold on. So
I'm not dumping. I'm just asking, like, has he won any accolades?
Let me just so he has made an all-star team. Yes. He had now in regards to the all NBA, I'm not sure if you just want to quickly Google that.
He has not won it. No, he has not. That's what I'm saying. So
fine.
even like so
Okay.
that's what I'm saying. Like to me, like I think Brandon Ingram, for him to be like again, remember this is predictive, right? So his numbers, he's playing with Zion, JV. His numbers aren't going to be as high because Zion is back, right? So to me, in terms of predictive analysis, I don't think this year his numbers are going to be as good as Siakam, only because now they have their full squad back.
Okay, can I so I was want in regard forget the numbers aside, just in regards to players.
I say he's more talented. Yeah.
Okay,
right?
so
I said that.
so
Yeah.
who of the two, if you were to rank, do you still think you'd rank Pascal Siakam lower than Brandon Ingram?
But lower better because I would and I would specifically because defensively one is good and one is not. And I really do think it comes to that. I think the gap between the two players defensively is wider than the gap between those two players offensively. I think Brandon Ingram is an insane talent. I'm incredibly impressed with what he's been able to do. His pull-up three-point shooting numbers last year were absolutely horrendous. I think his three-point shooting numbers were worse than Pascal Siakam, and I'm still calling him I'm still saying that offensively, I'm giving him the edge here despite that. So like I am giving Brandon Ingram full credit. I think he's that talented of a player, but I think the gap between them defensively is far too wide to put him as a better player than what Pascal Siakam can do, because we saw at times Pascal can be your best defender at times on a Raptors team that is so incredibly deep defensively. I think that it's OG Anunoby, Precious Jewel. We have guys, but last year, what he was able to do defensively for this team was exceeded anything that Brandon Ingram has ever done defensively for any team that he's been on. So to me, it's Pascal Siakam is a better player for that alone, because for as talented as Brandon Ingram is on offense, the gap is just not that big, especially if his three-point shooting numbers don't rebound to what they were a few years ago, because they've been bad for the last, I think, 2 years now.
Yeah. Also, I want to add on top of what Imman said, because I love Iman's case. On top of that, when has Brandon Ingram, like Brandon Ingram, like he hasn't been the number one guy on his team. Like I don't think so. Zion has been.
Season he was.
No, but I'm saying like.
And when in the playoffs, he balled out. He actually like elevated his game that first round. They're eliminated, mind you, but I think in that one series as a number one option, he showed more in the playoffs than Pascal has as a number one option. We're gonna take away the championship year when it was Kawhi and others.
Okay, but I think the bubble year takes so much from him. And Faheem, like you're so hyper focused on the bubble year. No, you are.
No, well, hold on.
Last year he played.
How many years? Forget the bubble year. He's had last year as a number one option. Pascal last year in the playoffs did not play as well as Brandon Ingram last year in the playoffs. So I'm like, at any time outside of the championship year, Pascal Siakam as a number one option has not stepped up and put in on performance like Brandon Ingram did last year.
Okay, but he still lost.
Okay.
So Brandon Ingram had better numbers, but I think Brandon Ingram, no offense, I think Brandon Ingram, again, offensively his numbers are great, but again, like I think you're focusing on the offense part. Like yes, he has better score, he scores better than Pascal. He's more of a bag, but I just think that on both ends, Brandon Ingram to me is not really a two-way type player. But yes, I would say this, right? If Brandon Ingram was a better player last year than Pascal, why wasn't he an all NBA team? I'm asking you, like, why didn't the NBA reward him with an all NBA team last year? Brandon Ingram for him.
I don't have an answer for that.
So to me, like that's what I'm saying. Like I think Brandon Ingram is very talented, but we've seen guys that are very talented just can't take the team to the next level. I think last year our team wasn't meant to be a playoff team, right? We weren't on paper, but I think Pascal, how we played, helped us elevate past that into a top playoff team. I think he was a key component. Even Scotty Barnes talked about how much Pascal helped him. So I just think that Brandon Ingram is a great talent, but in terms of predictive analysis, if Pascal was able to do this with a young squad, I think the third youngest team or fourth youngest team in the NBA, as a number one player, imagine what he can do second year. So I just think that if they're predicting based off last year, I think he's ranked too low, only because he was an all NBA team player too.
Can I also just like add in here, even looking at their playoffs, I thought Pascal had a phenomenal playoffs against the Sixers this past season. And I thought, Brandon Ingram, of course, had a phenomenal playoffs, but we're talking about two completely different defenses, right? That they were both sort of going up against there as well. Their shooting numbers, I think, were on par with each other, but Brandon Ingram did take more shots, make more shots, but like in terms of like their efficiency, I think they were just on par with each other. It wasn't like one was more efficient. Yeah. Actually, no, from deep, Pascal struggled and Brandon Ingram found his touch, right? But we're also using the sample size of 5-6 games as opposed to the entire playoffs and against completely different defenses. Who on the Mavs can guard Brandon Ingram? No one. Who on the Sixers can guard Pascal Siakam? We've seen them throw Joel Embiid on him. We've seen them throw Matisse Thybulle, some of the best defenders that can go onto Pascal Siakam. So I think it's unfair to like use that sort of 5-6 game sample size, 4 or 5 game sample size. I forget how many games the Pelicans had. I think it would have been like 4, 5. Did they get swept? They got swept, right? So we're using 4 games.
Not sure. Not sure.
I feel like they got swept, but I could be wrong about that. No. Look it up here.
Yeah, okay. I think the Pelicans may have won 1 game.
The Pelicans, no, 6. Okay, so they won 2 games. So
yeah, they won.
Looking at the sample size of like 6 games still for both players,
right.
As opposed to like the entirety of the season. I think Pascal Siakam, the fact that he made All NBA over Brandon Ingram there, I think he did have a better season than him. And even if we're looking at that 6 game sample size, they're going up against different defenses. And I think that matters. It's not like Pascal played poorly in his and one played well. I think they both played well. I will give the edge to Ingram for the 3-point shooting alone, but in terms of efficiency, they were both really good, and Pascal was going up against Joel Embiid.
Okay, let me throw
a major difference.
Let me throw one other thing out before we transition to our next segment. In regards to the dog, that's something that doesn't show up on a box score, but it's like what's going on with the motor, pressure, things like that. I happen to think that Brandon Ingram, he has that dog, he has that motor. Now, there's no way we can prove it, like, it's just not going to show up, but it's just a feeling you get by watching someone under pressure. I want to throw it to you guys, of the two. Do you think that Pascal has more of a dog, more of that than Ingram? I'll start with you, Imman. Go ahead. You're smiling and shaking. Go ahead.
I do, okay. Yeah. And I think you can see that on the defensive end, right? Like I think when we talk about defense, a large part of it is effort. It's not like Brandon Ingram doesn't have size. He's incredibly long, right? He's a frail man, but he's incredibly long. He's got that. To have that dog in you, like when we think about players in the league that have that dog in them, they're all great defenders, every single one of them. Right? Like even when you just talk about players that are just defenders, whether it be like, even when people talk about like the Patrick Beverleys who like, can will their team to the playoffs and stand up on the scorer's table and celebrate like it's a championship, or the Tony Allens of the world, like they're gritty players, right? The idea of grit and grind, the entire Memphis ethos was having great defenders. I think having that dog in you is defense, because defense is 80% effort. It is predominantly caring about that side of the ball and going after it. So to me, you don't have that dog in you if you're not an elite defender, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to me, like I think they're both dogs, but different types of breed, right? One's like a pit bull, one's a Rottweiler. Like to just be like I think people define dog as one way. I think Pascal is a dog, but just because his dog isn't shown like Brandon Ingram. Keep in mind, y'all, one's Cameroon, one's American, like 2 different types of people. So I just think that they're both dogs, but in different ways, to be honest. Like I like, to me, first of all, to freaking make it and be a starter in the NBA, you got to be a freaking dog. Like to play at this level, you have to be a dog. That's why the whole dog thing, like they're both dog, but I can see why you may prefer Brandon Ingram's bark, but people are going to prefer Siakam's bark, right? They're both barking. There's different sounds. That's all. Right. Ruff. I'm examples. I'm barking, guys. Okay.
All right, Nelly J. You know what? Let's go to for the culture.
For the culture, we like to highlight individuals for the culture. And today we get to highlight Imman Adan. Yo. Yo, so y'all, if you don't know, Imman is a huge, not only basketball fan, but basketball brain. She works with Yahoo Sports. She freelancing. She's a writer. She's also huge on Twitter. I mean, if you're in Raptors Twitter, NBA Twitter, you better know who Imman is, okay? But not only that, she's for the culture because she's someone that also has a podcast, okay? Podcast that's popping. They're the only, I guess, leading female fatale podcast called Dishes and Dime with their co-host. I believe it's Sandy and a few other ladies as well. So, Imman, we're so happy to have you on the show today because you're someone that we like to highlight because you're doing something as a content creator. We're also a person of color, but you're also someone that has invested so much time into sports and the culture. So we're happy to have you on here, my dear.
Thank you.
No
Nice.
problem. So guys, walk us through like your journey. Like, when it comes to having a career path in sports as a woman, it can't be easy. So walk us through how you became or how you fell in love with basketball.
How I fell in love with basketball. That happened when I was really young, just growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in. We only cared about basketball and Vince Carter, right? Like it was, Matt Sundin, Ty Domi. We didn't really care about them like that. It was Vince Carter and what he was doing. So I was like 6 years old, maybe. I was 6 years old during the slam dunk contest. So I was 6. And that's like, that was the moment for me. I remember watching it with all the kids in my neighborhood. And like, we had Raptors ball at the local community center, Trinity Bellwoods Park, literally the year after. And we were all there. And so like, for me, it was basketball became the thing that I fell in love with at a really young age. And then I got on Twitter when I was like 16, maybe. And was just tweeting Raptor games because my friends were like, shut up, we don't care about you talking about the Raptors all the time. So I came online and that was like the only space that I could like truly talk about basketball in that way. Jordan, I don't know, Mr. underscore Sticks on Twitter. He was the only other Raptors fan that was on Twitter back then. This is years ago.
Wow.
And it was only the two of us really that were there, and I was tweeting about it a bunch. And then like, years later, sort of a Raptors community formed. And it started to take off from there. But yeah, it was just me and Jordan tweeting about the Raptors and everyone else telling us to shut up because they were, fans of the Lakers or the Bulls or, whoever else. But yeah.
So you know what? There's so many people who are fans of basketball, but don't go into depth in terms of understanding the game, the perception of basketball, what goes into becoming a top talent. You actually care about all those things, the data and the game itself and the behavior. So what made you want to do a deeper dive and walk us through that journey in becoming or writing about sports too?
Yeah, so honestly, I'm a nerd. When it comes down to like, I watch The Wire, and then I'm on threads reading about like the intricacies of like the storyline and stuff. So I feel like that's always just been a part of my personality. But I got into basketball forums because, like I said, I was looking for a way to talk about basketball because no one else around me wanted to. So, and then once you get into forums, you learn that there's like this whole other world. Like, I was like, what is PR? What is TS percentage? What does any of this mean? And so you start to like just learn about it from there. And I want to say that finding basketball content was really, really hard when I was young. Like what you guys are doing, like podcasts like this just did not exist. And so I went online to like really look for things because you couldn't turn on Sportsnet, you couldn't turn on TSN and hear people talking about basketball. And when you got online is when you were like, for me, I was introduced to like the Basketball Jones. I don't know if you guys remember them. They were out of Toronto now, no dunks. And like I started to listen to them when I was in high school. And like once you start to like, I was just looking for regular basketball content, but then because it didn't exist, only online existed, that's where the nerdy stuff was. And I was like, oh, okay, this entire world exists. And so like I started to get into basketball like blogs, like, what Blake Murphy and William Liu and all these people were doing. And honestly, the first podcast I ever did was with William Liu. I was a guest a couple of times. And I say that like that bumped my follower count. I had like 2,000 followers. I was like, what are people following me for about the Raptors? Like I just be talking, and it was just it just sort of continued from there. But I would say like in high school is when I started to like try to understand the game. I would talk to like my coach about certain things, and it's just like learning just sort of the basics of it, but then learning the game behind the game, and then you come into the NBA world, and that's like it sometimes even feels like a completely different sport than anything that you're doing when you're a kid. And so like wanting to understand that better. And it was great that there were so many online resources that went into it. So yeah, shout out to No Dunks and William Blue and all those people.
Big up to them. I mean, so I really think it's all about inspiring, the next generation, right? I think us growing up, we didn't have the resources that they're having now. Like growing up, we didn't see women like our color on TV talking about basketball. They played, they were wives of people, but they weren't talking about it. So what is one advice, or what is one thing, if you can go back and say, wow, I wish I knew that back then? What's something that you can tell someone now listening, that advice to say, you know what, if I knew about this particular thing, it would have been a lot easier for me?
That you can just do it. I think that that's what it is. That like whatever gates that you think are being kept from you, whatever boundaries that you think exist, they don't exist. Like it wasn't until Sandy put out the tweet and was like, hey, let's do an all women's podcast, that like I was like, yeah, I'm down to do a podcast. And that was something that people were like asking me to do for years, but it was just like I didn't think that I could. I was like, I could be a guest on people's podcasts and talk, I guess, but like not understanding that like I could. And even writing was something that like I had editors being like, we think you can write. And I was like, no, like, yeah, I used to write, but like I don't. And them just being like, no, we think you can, and then doing it, and then you get to be in Slam magazine, and then you get to be like just doing things and putting it out there and start freelancing and making a career off of it. That was something I didn't know that I could do. And so to like anyone who's like a young Black girl being like, yeah, it's like a different world. No, you can just do it. Not to steal from Nike, but like that I think is like the best piece of advice is if you want to do this, just put in the work. And if you're putting in the work younger than I started, like super late, I could have been doing this earlier, and I like beat myself up over that. Where like, so if you have, and it doesn't even have to be with basketball, it doesn't even have to be writing about the sport. I think it's just like doing what you're passionate about, and people will find you. And if you're passionate about the work that you do, it'll be good work and people will find it.
I love that. It's so simple. Like you ask someone this big question about what, and you're like, just do it. It's like, yeah, like don't think, just do. I think sometimes we can overthink ourselves, or overthink to the point where we gain fear. Yeah. And we think, well, they accept what I have to say. Well, my opinions matter. But if you care, you're passionate about something, just do it. Don't worry about it. Just do it.
So you mentioned you talked to coaches, which is interesting. I guess you played. What level? How far did you get?
Not great at it. No. I did it for a while. Up until about high school. I didn't go any sort of past that. But I like talking about basketball more than I like playing basketball. But yeah, no, it was a little bit when I was younger. I started playing when I was around 7, with like raptor balls in the community, and then I just school teams and things like that. But yeah,
what started first with the love? Was it just being a fan watching, or how much did playing actually affect your love for the game?
I'll tell you a question. So I grew up in a neighborhood where I was the youngest, and so like I didn't get a choice on what we got to watch on TV. So if I was watching TV with all the kids in my neighborhood and my older sister and things like that, like they got to decide, and it was basketball that they decided to watch quite often. Like especially if it was like, the playoffs or, all-star games and things like that. And so I didn't get a choice, and I had to sit there and watch it. So I think the love of basketball watching it came first, just because it was fun to be with like, your older sister and all of her older friends, and like you have everybody kind of watching it. You just kind of felt like, oh, I get to be a part of this. So that came first. And then that was around when I was 6. Like I said, it slam dunk contest, really just being around all the kids in my neighborhood, watching Vince Carter with Toronto on his chest and Tracy McGrady, watching them do what they did, and being around my sister, like my older sister, and all of like all the older kids in my neighborhood, and being like, yeah, like as a 6-year-old, I'm like, yeah, I get to hang out with the 12-year-olds and do this, you know? And so that came first. And then the following year, Trinity Bellwoods Park, that's a local community center by where I used to live, they had a Raptor ball thing. And it was clear that like the success of like, 2000 Raptors basketball made a bunch of kids want to do this. So they started that program. And that's the first time that I ever started playing sort of organized basketball. And that came afterwards. And that did continue it, but it was still like, I just wanted to be Vince Carter and Allen Iverson. So
Period.
So also I find even like in getting introduced to you and your sound and what you bring, you've come across as very thorough. Even just in regard the back and forth we had with the Brandon Ingram, you actually took the time to just even find some facts. So it's more than just, opinions and feelings. You like to actually give some hard proof. But you also mentioned that you weren't sure at the start if, how you would do in regards to writing or in being on a podcast. I'm just wondering from the writing aspect, how do you like your process? Do you find, first of all, it easier to speak like podcasts or to write? Because it seems like you're very much a researcher. I don't know much about you like that, but I could tell by your style that, like I said, you're very thorough. So research is probably a big part of it. But when you research, it makes it, I would assume, easier for you to formulate your opinions around your research. So if you can just really quickly just let me know in regards to what you find easier, and just a little bit of something about your writing process, because you're really good. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. Researching is a big part of it, and it's something that I appreciate that you said that. I think that's like what I really try to do. And in terms of speaking or writing, that's kind of always been just to give you an insight on the background of my life, that's always kind of been like these two things that teachers were always like, you should write more, and you're a great public speaker. Like those were sort of the two things that I got quite often. And like I always used to say, like, I was a French immersion kid. So for me, I was like, speaking in French is so much easier than writing in French. Like, I'd rather do this. But then it came English class, and I was like, but I like writing essays. So that's always kind of been a question where people have asked me, like, what do you prefer? And I'm like, depends on what language it's in first, but also like, I don't know, because there were two parts that I enjoy just sort of speaking off the cuff, because like sometimes writing is a painstaking process for me, where like it requires a lot of research. It requires like a lot of sort of rereading what I'm saying and trying to find my voice in it, and it becomes a more thorough thing, where I think it depends if it's kind of if it's something that I want to dig deep into, if it's something that like last year I wrote a piece that I was really proud of. It was a piece on there was two parts. One was a piece on the Raptors and the Cavs, and how they were sort of zigging when the rest of the league zagged by going with big wings for the Raptors, and just last year when the Cavs still had Lauri Markkanen, going with their three sort of center lineup. And that was a piece that required a lot of sort of research, and that was a piece that I felt like I don't know that I would be able to coherently speak this. I think I need to get my words on paper for it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I come up against that, where I'm like, I just need to get my words on paper in order to explain everything that's sort of, going on in my head and trying to get this out. And it was the same thing with, I'm sure you guys remember the Rachel Nichols situation. And Rachel Nichols, Maria Taylor, and that was another piece that I was really proud of. That's another, like, I would say if you ask me my two favorite pieces, those would be my two favorite pieces for Basketball News that honestly I've ever written anywhere. And with the Rachel Nichols one, because it was as a Black woman sort of existing in this world, it was something that I felt very personally, and I knew that, like, whether it be like emotions getting the better of me when I'm trying to speak, and not saying like crying or anything like that, but like it was something that I felt very strongly, and I had a lot of thoughts, and I was like, there's too much nuance that would get lost. I talk too fast. Sometimes my thoughts and my words cannot connect on this, that it needs to come out in paper. So I think there are certain instances, especially when it's a more long form thought process and there's too many things going on there, whether it be emotionally or mentally, that I would prefer to get it out on paper. But like talking is so much easier. So like,
Yeah.
like it's just a shorter burst of things, you know, if it's just an argument on Pascal versus Brandon Ingram, let's talk that out. But
Right.
if it's something that's more in depth, certainly prefer the writing aspect of it because it's hard for me to get all of my thoughts out in a coherent way.
I got one more in regards to this. So, for instance, in hip hop, like rap, Jay-Z, he's been known to, like him, Biggie, and a lot of rappers after, they've been known to have thoughts, keep them in their head, and when they hear a beat, match their thoughts to the beat. Like they don't write their lyrics down. It's like it's not like a freestyle. It's a thought that they might have 4 bars, sit with it, and then make another 4 bars, sit with it. And then when the beat comes, they can match, they can pull backs from a thought that they had from last week of 4 bars and put it to beat. Reason why I say that is you mentioned about, sometimes your mouth is moving faster than your brain, or your brain is moving faster than your mouth, whatever the direction is going. I think you clearly have an ability to, like, you speak very fast, but you pack in a lot of words in that time. So I guess my question I have for you is, when you're writing, obviously writing comes from inspiration. And
Imman, I don't think you speak very fast because I speak fast, girl. So
okay.
you good. Go ahead, Faheem. Grandpa Faheem, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, in regards to your writing process, and it's often inspiration. Are you the kind of person who, because no one tells you, hey, write on this, you have to be inspired and you think of whatever you're going to write. Is your writing process, you have this thought maybe, and do you have this flood of inspiration that you can write an article maybe in one time? Or are you the kind of person to maybe have something, maybe jot something, leave it for a bit, come back, or is it more of a longer process? That's what I want to know.
It's a longer process for sure.
Okay,
for sure. It sometimes, I mean, I've had like there've been pieces where like I wrote a Stephen Curry piece last year, and it was just a thought that I had, and it was a thought that I maybe have had for a while, but I just started writing recently. So it was like, oh, I can get all of my thoughts out on this one thing because it's something that maybe I've been sitting with for a long time, but I haven't had the outlet to really get it out. So things like that exist where it's just like a rush of a day. But for the most of the time, if I'm writing a piece, it's a painstaking process because I am just sort of taking down little breaks. Not to compare myself to Hov or Biggie is that. I'm not gonna ever do that. But yeah, it's just it does work sort of differently. But I usually I try to have a thought and come back to it, and it's a painstaking process to get all of my ideas out there. But yeah, that's
so it's a possibility. It might take a few days maybe to write a piece, opposed to just a day or two. Like it could maybe even a week, maybe.
Yeah, especially because like I do try to be I try to pull things. I try to be researched on it. I try to like have and like I sort of, how I write my pieces is it's very rarely like just an article, like just straight. I'm typing the beginning. I'm usually just writing paragraphs, and I'm like, oh, let me move that to the second part. Let me move that to the conclusion. Let me bring that there. And so like, because it's so choppy and it's just these thoughts that I have out, like an outline of like, kind of like basic like English class 7th grade essay where you have an intro, you have a conclusion, you have your 3 points, right? Like I kind of do that.
Yeah.
And like once I'm actually building out the piece, everything is moved around, and like whatever the structure was at the beginning, not at all what it is at the end.
Right.
So because it's such a mismatch of thing, it does require some days. And like, because I want to go into it researched, maybe I learned something in my research that is actually not what I thought at the beginning. So now that point entirely changes. So it just becomes this like a longer process. I try to spend, at least a week on a piece, unless it's something that, an editor's like, no, we need it out today. So just quickly get something out.
Get it up. You know what, Imman? I'm so happy you broke that down, because I think a lot of people probably have thought about blogging, thought about writing things, and they don't understand the work behind it. So I'm happy you broke it down. Y'all just got some free freaking tutorial. You know what I'm saying? Free game.
I will for real. I don't know that that's great though. Like I think that I obsess a little too much over some things sometimes, that like it becomes too much of a process, right? Where like even this last video essay that I just put out for Yahoo Sports Canada, that was something that is a thought that I had in it, like that because it's something that I feel about the Raptors and it's something that I think about quite often. It was something that came out in very quickly. But then I started to get into my head and I started to do the research, and like it became a week-long process that did not need to exist. It could have happened in a day. And you know, most of the editors that I have say, you're being too much of a perfectionist. Get it out as quickly as possible. But because you know, people do want quick hits. But
I know, but
I try to take more time with it.
Honestly, you're being too modest. Iman, you got 99 problems, but that ain't one. You know what I'm saying? You good, girl. You good. A couple things I want to ask before we, you know, get off for the culture. When it comes to Dishes and Dime, right? Tell the guests, you know, what the podcast, what is it about? What do you guys discuss? Please.
You see my Dishes and Dimes merch?
Yes.
Okay.
I gotta get one of those. Yo, listen, I'm wearing a Raptors hoodie right now, 2-5.
Yeah, I love it.
But so talk about Dishes and Dime. What is the podcast about? What's typically y'all laying in that podcast?
Yeah, so Dishes and Dimes. Honestly, we're working on the sort of relaunch, so we should be coming out with episodes every Monday moving forward.
Nice.
But Dishes and Dimes started with a tweet from Sandy being like, "Hey, because you know, Raptors Twitter has a lot of really great women, really smart, really insightful, really funny women, and yet at one point, Dishes and Dimes started. I want to say like." The year after the championship. So it started around December 2019, like heading into 2020, January 2020, I think it was like our official launch. And so at that time, there were so many women on Raptors Twitter, so many smart, funny, insightful people, yet every single blogger that we knew, every single podcast that we knew was just men. And we were like, why? Like, there's so many of us. This is such a great community for women. Why are the only people speaking on platforms guys? And so we decided to come together. Sandy put out a tweet and basically said, you know, does anyone want to start an all women's podcast? And there was 9 of us to start Dishes and Dimes. And the 9 of us came together and we really dedicated to it. And it honestly, it was so great to really see the support that it had, because we were sort of wary about women coming in and starting a podcast. The reason why it's called Dishes and Dimes is because kitchen is, you know, a common joke. Right. We get quite a bit, right? Like as much as it did in the past, we also like that's a common joke. So we knew we were sort of up against as women coming into this, but the response from Raptors Twitter, the response from the NBA at large, like NBA media at large, was really, really positive. And I think that showed that this was a long time coming and something that was certainly needed and necessary. And I want to give a shout outs to Raptor Queens as well, because they started around the same time. Both women's podcasts started at the same time, and so Raptors got 2 women's podcasts starting out then, which I think is really, really great. And the support and the success that really started from that took a lot of work. You know, none of us knew what we were doing. Our sound quality was garbage until we got our mics and things like that. But yeah, we're like 3 seasons in now, which just sounds wild to say. And we've everyone has kind of opened up a door into NBA media or Raptors media in some way, just because, well, not everybody, because some people Cidra's a lawyer. She's like, you guys take this. I gotta, you know, defend people in court and things. But, you know, the people who wanted to pursue things here got writing opportunities, podcasting opportunities, and other gigs online as well. So that's pretty cool.
No, that's dope. And that's what I like about it. I think it's a safe space, right, for women to talk about sports. And I think, you know, a lot of times you rarely see spaces for women to speak and, you know, make mistakes. Sometimes, you know, we hear guys say the dumbest, sorry, men, but some men say the dumbest things on Twitter and people are like, oh, ha, ha, ha. A girl says it. This is why girls can't, you know what I mean? It's like, we're always so overly criticized, I think. So having a safe space. Oh my Lord, can I speak? A safe space to speak, and you know, give takes, be wrong, but also have fun. Like I think, there's so much space for women in the sports world. So guys, please check out Dishes and Dime. I've been following y'all since actually Faheem found you guys. So I've known about y'all since 2020. Yeah, 2020. So I was like, oh, this is a cool podcast. Thanks, Raheem. So he put me on y'all. You know what I'm saying?
Appreciate
So
that.
so big up to y'all. And we're gonna have links to their actual y'all are on all podcast platforms, right? Their guys are everywhere. So we're to that. And I'm excited for your new episode dropping. It's dropping when, Sandy? New episode. When's it gonna be dropping?
So every
Monday. So starting this Monday coming, or
yeah, every Monday moving forward, we'll have an episode, and we'll try to get special guests every single week.
Awesome. So y'all please check them out. And of course, you also dropped a vlog on Twitter for Yahoo Sports. And actually, like you dropped a few, but this one was called the current one you just dropped was around, I have here, why the Raptors will be a problem for years to come. Walk us through what inspired you to do that video vlog.
Yeah, so I wanted to start doing some video content, some video essays, to be honest. And I think it goes back to Faheem's question about like, what do I prefer, writing or speaking? Sometimes I prefer writing, sometimes I prefer speaking, and it depends on sort of what the hit is. And this is one where this is something that I want to really test my hand out, and this is something that I want to do more this season. This is like a brand new thing for me, so it's kind of weird to just be alone and talking in front of a camera like that and writing out a script for myself. It was a weird process, but it was fun to do, and it was a thought that honestly I think just watching the timeline and watching people kind of be upset that the Raptors didn't make any moves, and people really sort of questioning what the direction is, and I just feel like I was sitting back being like, I think what the Raptors are doing is smart. I think what the Raptors are doing is good. And like, I think that sometimes we can get caught up in these other moves. We can get caught up in DeJounte Murray and Donovan Mitchell and all these other moves that are happening and being like, why aren't the Raptors doing anything? And I've been a Raptors fan for a long time. I watched the Sean Marions and the Hito Turkoglu's and, all of these big splashy moves that amount to nothing. And it's like I appreciate Masai Ujiri's patient approach, and I wanted to sort of talk about that. And also I think sometimes people look at things as though the grass is greener, and they're seeing a team with all-stars and all-NBAs, and it's like, look at your team, you've got an all-star, right? You have an all-NBA player, Pascal Siakam, you have a young budding potential superstar in the future, and Scotty Barnes. You've got so much talent here, and it's like, it's easy to look at what the Cavs are doing or what the Hawks are doing, but there's a reason why the Raptors were the 5 seed and those teams are in the play-in. And they're working their way into the second tier, but the Raptors can feel like they're solidly already there. And I just sort of wanted to like make everyone calm down a little bit, but also really appreciated how Masai Ujiri was building this team. And I thought it was an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because I think a lot of people make moves just to make moves, right? It's kind of like when you're a GM in fantasy, right? Sometimes, like, if you ever do fantasy, like, you're in these forever fantasy leagues, and just because I didn't do a big trade doesn't mean my team is not good. I think people just think you have to make a move to be better, but I think we did make some good moves, and we have pieces that we can move. So sometimes not making a move is the move. Guys, look at that. Sometimes not making a move is a move. So I'm happy you broke that down for sure. So guys, we're going to have all the information. Please follow Imman, y'all. Do me a favor, okay? Take the time, follow her, support the podcast. We got to support people of color, the BIPOC community in Toronto and in sports. So definitely, Imman, thank you. And this is why you're for the culture.
Most definitely. Definitely a Raptor content trailblazer.
Basketball, not just Raptor, basketball content blazer. And also, y'all, please don't talk smack about Kyle Lowry in front of Imman. Okay, if you want to be ripped, okay, beautifully, okay, don't insult Kyle Lowry in front of her. That's all I gotta say for him. That's all.
Fair enough. All right, so let's close this out with this last segment. That's absurd.
Faheem, bro. What was absurd this week? What was absurd?
Luka Doncic.
Or his mama. Sorry.
Wow. Luka Doncic is actually suing his own mother over a trademark, Luka Doncic 7. while his mother is regaining control over the brand and the trademark. Absurd.
Wow. Family problems. Iman, go ahead, my dear. What's your thoughts on this situation here?
It's odd and sad. Like I don't like give your son access to his name. Like I don't quite understand the sort of like I get it's family beef. I guess it's family drama, but like it's his name. It's something that he's working for. It's his trademark. Apparently he can't, trademark his own. He tried to do another version of it. Like I think just trademarking his name alone. And basically the court said no, because one that's very similar already exists and your mom has access to it. So that's why he's suing her for it. And I just think that like, you should have control of your own name. And maybe Miss Mama needs to release some of that because he's the one working hard for it. I don't know. It's a mess.
So I get that, but think about this though. This like she gave him the name technically, right?
Okay,
So,
wait.
Okay,
Hold on,
Was she with him shooting in the gym? Was she with him shooting?
Hold on, Faheem. Was she the one crossing out, dunking on Pat Bev a couple years ago in the bubble?
No.
Is she the one that worked his tail off to be like? Listen, a name isn't a name without the talent. Okay, you know what I'm saying? No one's trademarking Joe Smo on the street. No one cares. Luka has built his own off of work. Guys, playing basketball, being a point guard at his size is not easy. He's been playing ball since he was like what? Like professionally, 15, 16, playing against grown men. Like, no, his mama greedy. Hey, mama, girl, you're being kind of greedy. It's absurd. I get it. You did give him the name, but it's your child. So he asked you to register for him. You did it because you saw that he was coming up. I think he maybe was too young to do himself. Cool.
I think she was also managing him also.
Okay, but fine. Okay. But that's your child. Like, why would, like, as a parent, isn't our purpose to give our child everything that we have? Everything. So to me, I just think it's absurd that as a mom, you wouldn't want to give your child the tools. Hey, I got this for you. There you go. Flourish. I think it's very selfish. I'm sorry. It's absurd. Absurd. That's it. Mama Doncic. Absurd.
I'm gonna go with hopefully this is not too close to what's already being proposed, being I guess Luka Doncic 7, but I like Luka Magic. Luka Magic should be good. I keep hearing that, and I'm like, yo,
no,
Luka, not for you.
How about you? How about you?
Luka Magic.
Luka Magic.
Even if he does take that, I still think he should get his own name. Like get Luka Doncic 7 though. Like you have both.
Get it back, man.
You know what I mean? Like I agree with Nelly on. Like it's his name.
Yeah.
Give it to him.
Come on, man.
Fair enough.
A parent's goal is to give your child the tools to be successful.
Gotcha.
He's an adult right now, you have to let him fly. And it's not like he's doing anything bad. Like I can understand a parent sort of wanting control if they don't trust their child with the decisions that they're making or anything like that. But it's clear that you guys don't have a relationship right now. And that's something that you need to be working on, not trying to control money in your pockets, because clearly he's doing things without you right now and needs that. So
yeah, it's greed, it's absurd. Come on, Mama Doncic, stop being greedy.
All right, you heard it first. All right, so Nelly J, let's put this episode in the books.
Yes, y'all, that was the Good Wookie Show.
Yep.
So Imman, we'd like to give our special guest a chance to do a shout out, so the floor is yours, my dear.
Can I shout both of y'all out?
Oh, of course.
This is like a lot. This is a lot of fun, and also, the spaces I think are really, really great. Being that, because sometimes it's hard after a loss. I don't want to do a space. Like I don't want to talk about the Raptors. I want to watch another game to forget about it. But
right.
I think the consistency there, seeing you guys there doing your thing, and also this podcast is really great. You guys did your homework on me. Oh my God. So I think what you guys are doing is really special. So today, both of Faheem and Nelly J are my shout out.
Oh my God. Well, my shout out is quite simple. It's you. Hello. Imman, you know what? I always learn so much from you. When you speak, I'm like, wow, like you're someone that I think, is always like educating, but you're also spicy. I like it. It's a bit of like, listen, I'm gonna slap you with this fact. Pow. You know what I'm saying? It's like Shazam with the fact. Like I should call it, I gotta find a name for a slap and a fact. because that is Imman. You know what I'm saying? But I gotta give you a shout out because you're also welcome. When we first came on Twitter, we're like, okay, this is a new space. We didn't know it, so thank you for always welcoming us in your space. And when you ran a room, always giving us a floor to speak. You're definitely a welcoming person, so we appreciate you, Imman, for all your support as well. And I want to just shout out all the ladies on Raptor Spaces. Big up to y'all. You know what I'm saying? Big up to all the Dishes and Don. Big up to the Raptor Queens. Every woman in Toronto doing basketball content, creating all that. Big up to y'all. But pass the mic to Faheem.
Nice. So I'm with that also. Shout out to, like you said, Dishes and Dimes, Raptor Queens. I do want to, like, when I first came across, I can't remember how, came across Dishes and Dimes. And I was like, interesting, a woman's Raptor podcast. Let me check it out. I took in maybe about 20 minutes and I was like, whoa. And I immediately like text Nelly J and I was like, hey, you know what? You should really tap in, see what's going on over here. Like these guys are really about it, you know? So this is like, you know, some people make recommendations. Like this is a recommendation I can say, like, listen in. Obviously, she's been here for an hour. So, you know, she's clearly someone who's valid. Tune in, Dishes and Dimes. Check on Yahoo Sports Canada for what she's got going on.
Support,
also,
share, retweet her stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
Make my girl go viral.
That's
viral.
Right. The proof's in the pudding, you know? So, Imman, you're definitely my shout out today. And it's great. Thank you very much for coming through. We'll have to have you come through in the future because we know that, you know, you're going places and it's nice to tap in early before it's out of here.
Was that a poop or was that a bomb?
No.
I don't know what that was, y'all.
That was supposed to be an explosion.
It was like
all right.
Sorry.
All right, Nelly J, let's put this episode in the book.
All right, y'all. It's a good rookie show. If you had a good time, you enjoyed yourself, please like, subscribe, and tell a friend to tell a friend. Faheem.
On all platforms, you know where to find us. That's a good rookie show. Imman, we appreciate you. And we out.
Peace.